The Conjuring from 2013, which I feel like we've been building up to here because we've been talking about the Warrens and we've been talking about other movies like the Amityville Horror. And yeah, this is kind of the culmination of all that. This is a movie actually about the Warrens, and it is the first movie in the so-called Conjuring universe, which now apparently contains about 8 movies. I must admit I've only seen this first one. I haven't seen any of the sequels or the offshoots or whatever. This is the only one I saw, and I did really enjoy it. I thought it was very well done. I thought it was very effective. I bought the Blu-ray, which I have here. So, you know, I did consider this to be a movie that I liked. But I think when The Conjuring 2 came out, I read an article by somebody who was saying, you know, the case that they've chosen to cover in The Conjuring 2 is one that is clearly a fraud. You know, it's clearly a fake. And they're covering it in this movie as if it's real. And that seems to be a little problematic. And I thought, yeah, you know, I can kind of see that point. And I didn't, as a result, I didn't see The Conjuring 2. But I still felt like I liked this movie and I enjoyed this movie. And I still did enjoy it, watching it again, but I found myself thinking about it in that way. Like, how much is this a true story and how much of this is something that may be completely fabricated? And I don't know the answer to that, but I feel they present the Warrens as if they are completely above board, as if this is all absolutely true. And they don't really even, I don't think they even show that there are people out there who disagree with them and who think that they are frauds. I don't think they really show that at any point in this movie. So it feels a little bit dishonest in that way. Like, these characters are a bit controversial in real life. You know, people either think that they were for real or they think they were frauds, but I don't think we get that balance in here. Now, does that matter? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that matters, because it is a very well-made movie. It's very effective, and it's you know, it's I guess one of the things I find a little bit strange about it is, again, it's got this divided perspective, because on the one hand we're kind of following the Warrens around, but on the other hand we're kind of seeing things from the point of view of the family. And I think it would have been better if it was one or the other. I think if it was all about the Warrens, that could have been a different movie. And if it was all about the family and the Warrens just kind of come in and do their thing, like Poltergeist kind of is about the family, it's not about the investigators. I don't know. I found that to be a bit of a difficult.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because in some of the behind the scenes footage I saw, James Wan was saying that he always wanted to make a movie about the Warrens. So you kind of wonder, was it made about the family? And then when James Wan come in, he wanted the Warrens to be a bigger part of it. That could be a possibility, because he did mention that. But I do agree. It's like, wait a minute, who's the lead actor and actress in this movie? Like, is it the husband and wife, Warrens, or is it the husband and wife family that's being haunted?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, there seems to be a story there with the Warrens that, she is sort of suffering. Like, every time she goes through one of these things, it seems to take something from her. She's potentially weakening herself, and I mean, that could be a compelling story, but yeah, I don't know. In some ways, should it just be about the family and their experience? I don't know, but it kind of plays a little bit like in a way, a greatest hits package of previous haunted house stories, and particularly maybe because it's the Warrens. But we have a scene where there's a static on the TV, which right away kind of evokes Poltergeist to me. When they show that image, I think, like, why would they do that unless that was a deliberate reference to Poltergeist, you know?
Yeah, the Warrens saw Poltergeist, and then they claimed that there's ghosts in the TV.
Yeah. And, you know, there's also a dog that knows something's wrong here. And there's a
Yeah,
little girl.
They saw The Uninvited too.
Yes. And there's a little girl who's sort of playing and talking to somebody who isn't there, you know, might be a ghost. Mm-hmm. And we bring the team of experts.
I think maybe they saw the bad
the
seed for that one.
Yeah. The team of experts coming in, you know, very much like Poltergeist in that way. Yeah. And again, I think this is a story that is ultimately about one of the parents, and in this case, it's the mother, who's kind of becoming possessed by the evil and may be a threat to the child. And so it feels very much like the Amityville Horror in that sense, you know, and the fact that they supposedly worked on that, you know, haunting, you know, it's interesting because a lot of the same things are here. So is it a case of people are taking the same ideas and using them again? Or is it a coincidence that they happen to involve these similar things? I don't know. But the ultimate kind of punchline for it is at the very end of the movie, and this isn't really a spoiler, but at the very end, they mention that there is a case on Long Island that they want to go look into. And of course, that's the Amityville Horror, right? They're making reference. So that's their next case. They're going to go from here to the Amityville Horror. And my understanding is that they actually do that at the beginning of part 2, but I haven't seen part 2, so I can't say. But I do think it's a very well-made movie. I think it's well acted. I think there's a lot of good haunted house action in this movie. I just find myself kind of stuck on that question of, is this movie just complete BS? You know, is this just complete? I don't know. I'm not sure, because they're saying that this is the true story of the Warrens, and they're presenting it in a way that doesn't even feel like there's any controversy there. It's like, this is just real. This is what really happened. I don't know. I'm just not sure how to feel about that at this point. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there are two ways to look at this. One is to separate the Warrens from the movie, or you're never going to be able to get any headway because it's going to be too conflicting. Looking at it as just a movie, leaving the Warrens out of it, looking at the quality, it's a well-made movie. And I spoke earlier about like low-budget movies that cost nothing, generally horror movies that made a fortune and just went on to either have like a franchise or just make like a shitload of money relative to the budget. One movie I left out is Saw. Saw was another movie like that. Saw was directed by James Wan, just like this movie. See if I can tie that all together again.
Oh yeah, masterful.
So yeah, as far as like the James Wan is probably his best directed film. You know, I know he's directed several. It's probably his best job as far as like a well-polished movie. Like I probably enjoy Saw more than this, but this is probably a well-polished movie. Good actors, good acting, good performances, good cinematography, great budget. Everything was the costumes, because it's somewhat of a time period movie. Everything was executed very well. It's a blockbuster. It deserved to make a lot of money. It's a good horror movie. Is it the type of horror movie I would watch? It's a little too commercial for me. There's not a lot of interesting things there. I like the psychological stuff, like I mentioned before. Movies that push certain boundaries. This is like a safe Fast X, what Fast X is to action movies, or what the Avengers is to comic book movies. It's a safe movie that everyone can watch. But there's nothing about it that's that interesting to me. Is it good? Yes. Is it my cup of tea? No. Does it belong on this list? Absolutely. It's a huge profited movie, made a lot of money, very influential, ton of fans, multiple sequels, spin-off sequels with the Annabelle stuff. It's like kind of like All in the Family of Mook, because All in the Family, then they didn't just go on and have multiple seasons. It had multiple spin-off shows that had multiple seasons. So this had not just multiple movies, but it had spin-off movies that had multiple movies. So it just spawned a lot of stuff. So yes, this definitely belongs. Looking at the Warren aspect of it, to me, that's where it gets icky. Because one, they're frauds. Two, this movie makes them out to be everything they're not.
Hmm.
Yeah, like they do things not for the money, they do things for the money. They claim that certain places they go to aren't haunted. They claim everywhere they go to. It's like it portrays them out to be not just the opposite of what they are, but they make them out to be these altruistic heroes that just want to do nothing but the right thing. That should be, we should worship them. It almost comes off as propaganda
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
Warrens. And then
yeah,
when you read about the fact that even back then people thought they were bullshit artists, and then you read about the fact that, so again, with with firsthand accounts of sexual abuse. I mean, you want to be careful with that stuff because even with Me Too, you see that sometimes people just lie.
hmm,
There was a point where it's like, well, why would a woman come out and lie about sexual abuse? Well, you know what? After Me Too, there are a lot of people that went down, like Harvey Weinstein and stuff like that. But then when you really examine it, there are people that come out and just lie. After Me Too's been out for a while, you realize, wait a minute, some guys were just wrongfully accused and their careers were destroyed for no reason. So I don't want to like say this woman that came out against the Warrens is 100% true because
hmm,
she could just be lying. But
yeah,
supposedly, while they did sexually abuse women, one woman in particular said when she was 15, she was having sex with the Warrens, and then they moved her into the house, and she came out publicly with it. So I'm just saying, like, I'm not saying what she's saying is true, but those allegations are out there. And also is put into their contract that none of that stuff could be mentioned in the movie. So
yeah,
are they putting that stuff out there because you know what, they were wrongfully accused and they're just protecting their names? Or they know that, listen, that woman came out, more women may come out. You can't talk about this stuff in any way. Or, and it's written in the contract. So you have to take all that stuff into account when the filmmakers choose to have the Warrens be a part of the movie and choose to portray the Warrens the way they do. You can't fully divorce yourself of that. You can have a movie that's the greatest movie of all time, but if then in that movie they're portraying Hitler to be a hero, you can have a lot of people saying, yeah, it's a well executed movie, but like,
yeah,
did you have to make Hitler the hero? It's kind of
yeah.
like what's that movie with the Klansmen are the hero? The early
Birth,
1900s movies, Birth of a
Birth of a
Nation.
Nation. Yeah,
Birth of a Nation, where the Klansmen are the heroes. It's like you can
yeah,
acknowledge, yeah, this was a great movie, but so
yeah,
yes, it's a good movie, but making the Warrens a part of it just kind of makes it feel icky for me. But yes, it was a
yeah,
well executed movie.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think you've just made it even worse. I didn't know some of those things, but yes, it just raises even more questions about it. And again, maybe it would have been a better movie if they just focused on the family, and you could have the Warrens appear in it, but they could be figures that are a little uncertain. Like, I don't know, are these guys real? Do we trust these guys? Some people say they're phonies, and then it's at least kind of a, I don't know what's the word. It's kind of a gray area, but when you make them characters that seem to be above reproach, it's questionable, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And again, for me, like maybe saying it's based on a true story made the movie more profitable. To me, I mean, come on, based on true, we're in 2023. Are people really going to say, oh, because it said based on a true story, ghosts are real, and now I
Yeah,
believe this is real, and this is going to make me go out to the theater more than if they didn't say it was based on a true story? I don't know if that helped them in any kind of a way. If it was just a
yeah,
completely fictional story and left the Warrens out of it, I don't know if this would have made $1 less, you
yeah,
know? So,
yeah. Yeah, that's true. They could have just made it as a fictionalized story, and they could have followed the same. They could have used the whole history of the Warrens' case, but without saying that's what it is. The same way Psycho is based on Ed Gein or whatever,
mm,
but it doesn't say that, right? They don't use his name ever. It's just inspired by that, right?
yeah, yeah, and you would have been safe.